Hello, I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this word in your ear. The latest of hundreds of chats Mark Allen and I have had over recent years, some between ourselves and others with musicians, authors, comedians, and other people we like. If you'd like to help make sure they continue, you might consider being a Patreon supporter by visiting patreon.com/wordinyourear, or just by liking or subscribing in whatever way you prefer. On with the show.
You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
We're both enormous admirers of Craig Brown. Craig Brown, as everybody listening would know, the private eye diarist and the guy who wrote Mom, Darling and 1, 2, 3, 4 about the Beatles, who invented, in fact, Dave, the Mosaic memoir, which is
very clever
new publishing, which is just a series of fabulous kind of short stories and anecdotes about somebody interesting. And he's written this book about the Queen called A Voyage Around the Queen, which is, I cannot tell you, it's so brilliant. And it's full of these fantastic little, really eloquent points, which made you just stop and put your foot on the ball and look around the pitch. There's one where he says that the Queen, in her life, met over 4 million different people, and his conjecture is that is the largest number of people that anyone has ever met in history. And if you think about it, the Queen, we're always sending up that whole idea of did you come far? And, when did you start writing? All those questions that she used to ask, but she asked them for a reason, which is they couldn't sustain a conversation and she could then get on to the next person, but then spend about 30 seconds talking to everybody. So in the light that she every day was being introduced to people and every day having an actual conversation with them, 4 million people is possible. And I can't imagine now in a world where travel is more complicated, where a lot of things tend to be done online, where security is more complicated, where the whole idea of infection and the risk of disease, that whole era now seems to be completely unique, that somebody would spend, in her case, probably from the age of about 10 to the age of about 90, 80 years of her life, meeting a huge number of people every day. And the other thing go on.
Well, also, don't forget, she was probably the first and the last to do it, because she was the first, non-elected head of state in the era of the walkabout, which was, designed to have them briefly shaking hands with the largest number of people possible. It didn't happen to George VI. It wouldn't happen to Edward VII. Queen Victoria would not have known this at all. So, she enjoyed a unique role there. The other thing that always fascinated me about the Queen meeting people, I remember seeing a documentary about this years ago, and it dropped in what I thought was the extraordinary fact that she never says hello and she never says goodbye. Which, if you think about it, is entirely logical, because it's impossible to have a situation where the Queen goes in and goes, "Oh, hello, I'm the Queen," or finishes it by going, "Well, I'm going now to talk to somebody else." She doesn't do that. So consequently, the number of encounters she can have must be massively increased by the fact that she doesn't need to do that at all.
Yeah.
I also saw a quote, I think it was probably from the book, that apparently a standard line when she was talking to somebody and their mobile went off was to say, "Oh, you better get that. It might be somebody important." Which is a brilliant, brilliant line.
That is great.
Because everybody I know who ever met the Queen in any kind of confidential circumstances always say she was a wicked humorist. I was a guy I went to college with who ended up being a bishop. And when you're a bishop, when you cease being a bishop of one place and you're moved to another, you have a brief audience with the Queen. And he said that she was absolutely brilliant at accents. And
Oh, really?
he was not exaggerating at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry,
That's
you were
that's
saying.
a legacy of a childhood doing charades, probably,
I
and stuff like
suppose so.
that.
I suppose
Oh,
so.
it's
And
very
meeting
Victorian.
people, meeting people from
Exactly, meeting people.
absolutely every part
Yeah.
of the UK.
Oh, this book is it's just absolutely gripping. Just because everybody who ever met the Queen remembers it in such vivid detail. He's just gone through the index of various memoirs and just picked out the moment where they met the Queen and just had an incredible impact on them. But it just reminded me of John Peel's funeral. I remember telling you before that Paul Gammaccini made the speech at Peel's funeral in the cathedral in Bury St Edmunds. And he made the point that John Peel had listened to more music than any other human being on the planet before and since. I thought that was really interesting because up till about 1900, there wasn't any recorded music really to listen to. And if you heard music, it would, by definition, be live. And Peel had got sufficient amount of physical music and record playing equipment in his teens. And so from the age of about, 10 or 15, or whatever, he was playing records all the time. He spent 45 years being a DJ when he went to the office every day. I know because I used to go there occasionally, and he would be just constantly listening to records. On his holidays, he would be there with his big jiffy bags full of cassettes, ramming them into the car dashboard to much of the chagrin, I should imagine, of the rest of the family. But I thought that was quite interesting, and I wondered if there had been any other examples. There must be people now, because he actually died when he was 65, relatively young. There are probably people who've listened to more music. Do you think anyone's listened to more music than him? I mean, I guess
think the golden rule about massive consumption of anything, reading a lot of books or seeing a lot of films or anything, is no matter how much you think you've done, somebody else has done more.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. But the people I often think of are people like Elton John, because Elton John, certainly for a long period of time, used to go to Tower Records in Los Angeles or Virgin in London, and accompanied by a chauffeur, and he would buy 3 copies of everything that went in the chart, didn't he? And
Yeah,
he had a copy for each of his homes, South of France, Windsor and Atlanta, I think. And I think he would listen to them. So he did a different kind of listening, because an awful lot of John Peel's listening would be his potential session bands,
Would this work on late night radio?
Whereas Elton John was listening with a different head on, I suppose. And Elton John is just extraordinary for his familiarity with so much music. You know what I mean? He will know what Ed Sheeran's 3rd single was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he will have a view about it.
But he worked out something about the mechanics of it as well, about the structure of it, about the chord sequences. Oh, that's nicked from River Deep Mountain High.
And he's got a fantastic musical memory. The other one I suggested, there's a guy called Robert Christgau, an American.
Oh, yes.
American critic who's been writing Christgau's Consumer Guide, as I think it's called. It used to be in the Village Voice. I think it's online now. Well, he's certainly been doing it since very early 70s. And that involved reviewing whole albums. So pretty much everything that came out, he would listen to it. And he would have to come up with some pithy, acid summation of it, accompanied by not a star rating, but a kind of an alphabetical, an ABC plus rating. And he's still doing it now,
Yeah, he is. He's 82.
It's old he is.
Yeah, he is.
So let's say
it's a huge variety, isn't it? It's like it's hip hop. It's just, he's always addressed every single type of music. And
he has, which most people don't do.
No.
You know what I mean? He covers the waterfront, so whatever is happening commercially, he will do it. So, he must have heard a staggering amount of things. But I'm sure there are other ones that we're not aware of. I'm sure there are massive collectors and, I don't know, there are probably people who work for record companies or publishers or whatever who listen to millions of things. When I used to work as a record plugger briefly in the mid-70s, and used to take records to Radio 1, Mike Hawkes, who I think I remember, used to produce Kid Jensen's Saturday morning show. And Mike was very kind of diligent, really. And he would listen to everything. He might not listen to all of it, but he'd put the stylus on and he'd listen in front of you. You know what I mean? And so he might listen to 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and then just lift the stylus, move it a bit further along the record, so you could hear whether it got any better or whether you like the middle eight or anything. So consequently, he must have had a glancing, encounter with the staggering number of records in the course of his career. So I'm sure there's people like that.
I remember sitting in his office. Because I stood in for Kid Jensen a couple of times. I can remember him going through all the records. And that whole thing of putting the needle down at the beginning made you realise just how vitally important the opening 15 or 20 seconds were.
Absolutely.
If they didn't take off, then there would be no reason. Even the plugger, if they were there witnessing this, would have to concede that was not going to work on the radio.
Point. Yes,
and then we sit there going, it's a muscular ballad, or whatever line that they'd figured out. And it wouldn't be watching and thinking, actually, that sounds like dead air. Let's be honest. It just would do.
Yeah. So it's just funny, that whole business about people who do a lot of something. Generally speaking, there is somebody else. I was just looking at. I'm always fascinated by people. People in publishing like I do. And they read in a completely different way, don't they? They kind of read 4 novels in a day or something when they're looking for something that's publishable or whatever. But even people outside publishing, Warren Buffett, who we all know as the world's most successful investor, spends 80% of his day not looking at screens and seeing what stock prices are doing and so forth, as you might expect kind of keen young competitors to do. Now he spends 80% of his day reading books, just extra, because that's how he gets to know about absolutely everything, and things he might invest in. And
so do you just wonder what quantity of books these people are? Our mate Ed Needham is a good example. Actually, we have an old pal from EMAP who runs a magazine, very, very good book review, literary magazine called Strong Words, which is entirely written and edited by one person, which is Ed Needham.
Yes.
And Ed reads, I guess it must be, there's an issue every 6 weeks and he must have 75, 80, 90 books worth of stuff in there. And one of his methods of doing this is he walks wherever he has to go. He walks and he plays books on Kindle, audio versions of the books, but plays them at double speed.
Yes.
So races through them, but he's still reading them, and he's still sufficient that he can write about it. He must have read thousands of books.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of that thing I read just the other day about, I think it was the New York Times, about Netflix and the amount of entertainment available. And they said that if you were to view everything that was available to you on Netflix non-stop, it would take you 3.5 years. 5.5 years if you allowed yourself to sleep for 8 hours a day. That, Dave, is the amount of viewing options that you have on Netflix. This is getting to the point where it is ridiculously counterproductive, don't you think?
Well, what's that? I always forget what that extraordinary stat is about YouTube. Just about the amount of new material uploaded to YouTube every day. It's
I think it is over 1 million streams or something.
Kind of the numbers. The numbers sort of don't mean anything beyond a certain point. But now that piece in the New York Times was making the point about Netflix, that the way it works is you're not attracted. They don't care whether you watch any particular show. They don't care whether you're attracted to the latest blockbuster or you just like watching old episodes of Seinfeld. It doesn't matter. Because what you're paying for, this is a quote from the piece, what we're paying for in the end is not any one show or any 3 or 10 or 50 shows, but rather the fathomless sense of abundance.
Yes.
The idea
Which
that
is meant to be sold as a good thing, and
endless.
it just seems chilling, doesn't it?
I got to the point with that. I can remember going, I used to work in a big record shop, and I can remember going to Tower in Broadway in New York or Sunset in Los Angeles, and being excited by this plenty, this fathomless abundance. Oh my God, look how many Beach Boys reissues they've got here, or comedy records or whatever. And then after you've had that for about 10 years, it starts to make you feel slightly nauseous, actually. So you get to the point where you go into these shops that have got absolutely everything. You think, oh no, I'm overfaced. I just don't want that much, I like some kind of selection, but Netflix, they kind of have to keep that idea going.
Well, it's true. He was saying that if you look at it, it's like it's not really a portal. It's like a keyhole. It's not a grand vista. It's a key. You're peeping through this keyhole. Yeah. So if you look at it, you get immediately a carousel of 75 shows and movies that are new to Netflix. And then there's the top 10 TV shows on US Today. And then there's another carousel of suggestions that because you liked Rebel Ridge or whatever, then here are 33 top picks for you. Then there's 75 binge-worthy TV dramas, and it's just suffocating, isn't it? It's just, which is why that whole idea of a trusted pal saying you really ought to watch or not watch this is incredibly valuable, I think.
It's amazing the amount of time I spend, because I've got not just Netflix, I've got Disney, I've got Apple, I've got Amazon Prime, and I can spend hours going through these things. And in the end, I'd start watching bits of series. And there may be things people have told me that are really good and whatever. And I found myself ungripped after 10 minutes, that they all feel as if they were made last week. They all feel as if they were made by the same kind of people. Yeah. About the same kind of people, with the same kind of language, and the same kind of limits of acceptability and so forth. And I so often stagger back and retreat and go looking. I go take a hurricane lamp and I go into some notional cellar way below the normal levels of, I don't know, the ITV site or the Channel 4 site or whatever. And, I leave a string behind me so that I can find my way back to the exit, if need be. But I keep going down and down and down in the cellar until I eventually find myself among the kind of John Mills and Michael Redgrave films from the 1940s or 1950s. Yeah. And you end up, like I ended up the other day, watching a World War II film called The Way to the Stars, which I'd never seen before, and thoroughly enjoying it. And nobody in the entertainment business would have ever devised that as a thing for me to watch in the 21st century. Well, that's kind of why I like it.
One of the attractive things about it probably would have been that it was a self-contained, tightly edited, pacey story. Because what was so attractive about what Netflix offered initially for me was the length of things. That's how I discovered things like Breaking Bad. What I found attractive about Breaking Bad was that you could make a drama that was this huge, that you could really get into the idiosyncrasies of the way people talked and their characters, and just all that lack of compression was really attractive. I now found totally the opposite, actually. I was watching something the other day called Apples Never Fall, which is the Sam Neill, Annette Bening thing. And starts off really well, but my God, it becomes dull. Partly because you feel they're just making it longer, actually, than it needs to be. And there's just, you're left with no sense that anything's really happening. I'm really over that idea of choice. I can remember that so vividly when When going to America the first time, and everyone said it's fantastic. There's just so much stuff. You go into an American supermarket, and you go and try and buy some peanut butter, and there'll be 12 different brands of peanut butter, and it seemed initially exciting, and then just seemed baffling and confusing and time wasting.
Well, as I read. Scott Galloway is a kind of marketing business guru. I was listening to a podcast the other day, which he was on, and he made the point. He says, choice is a tax. Which I thought was a really good point.
Good. Yeah.
It's a kind of penalty you have to pay. It's not a good thing. Talking of choice, have you ever actually gone into a local supermarket and just stood there and looked at the shampoos? It's mind-boggling, Mark. You probably haven't. You probably.
Do you know I don't buy the shampoo?
Okay, but no, just go and look at it. Go and look. There will be an entire aisle of shampoos.
Yeah,
and every variety of shampoo will have a special, I don't know, anti-dandruff version or a vegan version or a travel size or I don't know what. You know what I mean? That's just what they do. It's absolutely staggering, So I started doing these Instagram reels, reels in Instagram. I don't know, the maximum length 90 seconds or something like that. Just little pieces about records.
They're really, really good.
Well, thank you. You don't have to say that.
No, I love them.
But one of I think one of the things that people like about them, I started doing this about 6 months ago, and it's sort of snowballed. People, increasing number of people kind of follow it. And I think one of the things people like about it is you're picking one record from all these millions. No, just one. That's all it is. And just talk about one for, I don't know, a minute and a bit or something. And people, I think, find that idea just quite relaxing. Compared to, because we're all staring at a ton of, right now we're recording this thing, and probably when people are listening to this thing, they're probably in the same boat. They're looking at a load of records or a load of CDs or whatever, and the kind of the gap between looking at them and actually picking one out and putting it on and playing it and listening to it all the way through just seems to get longer and longer all the time, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It's harder and harder to do. It's harder and harder to feel yourself motivated to kind of concentrate on one thing. And so I think that's one of the things that people find attractive about it.
But also you're rescuing things from anonymity, aren't you?
Yes.
It's just a whole thing. I've got loads of records and you just pick on one. I had exactly the same experience last night. An old pal of mine now lives in Spain, and we were texting each other. We were at college together, and we were texting each other about a record called The 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus by Spirit. Yes. And it was just so funny, this exchange. And we were immediately, by writing about this thing, we were pinpointed back to the time that we first heard it. The two of us together, and our reaction to that record, and just amazing how that could just nail a particular time. And I'd forgotten about that record completely, and now there it is.
You hadn't
remember it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you hadn't forgotten about it, Mark. Nobody.
No, I hadn't really.
Nobody's forgotten the 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus. No. Thank goodness sake. Now, this brings us not entirely, not entirely logically, but anyway, it'll work. We were discussing the other day the uses of ChatGPT as a music guide, and the people are increasingly using artificial intelligence as a way of replacing the function that Google used to play in their lives. That you can ask it a question with a kind of qualitative element to it, and it will answer it in a way that something like Google couldn't, And so I'd been asking ChatGPT what were the best albums by various artists. So I've just done some in front of me, and I'm going to see if you can guess. So I asked ChatGPT What was the best Miles Davis album? Would you care to hazard a guess, Mark Allen?
Well, it'll obviously be Kind of Blue.
It is indeed Kind of Blue.
Yeah.
It says the best Miles
Sketches
Davis.
of Spain will be second.
It always starts with a bit of a disclaimer that obviously it's subjective and so forth, but he says the most frequently cited masterpiece is Kind of Blue, 1959, blah blah. It tells you a bit about it. Other key albums: Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, Miles Ahead, In a Silent Way, Sketches of Spain. And so I thought it was perfectly reasonable. So, what's the best Pet Shop Boys album, Mark, in the opinion of ChatGPT?
Actually,
that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
The best Pet Shop Boys album is often considered to be Actually. Tells you which tracks on it.
I've done a couple, so try a couple on you.
Oh, go on.
Best Beatles?
Well, I'm going to say it's going to say Revolver.
No,
is it? So
I thought it was Abbey Road, Sgt. Pepper, White Album, Revolver.
Okay. Oh,
See, I think it's interesting because the useful thing is it's not like you're going to a critic's personal opinion.
No, true.
This is a digest of hundreds of personal opinions, isn't it? So a pattern has emerged. It's like if you go to Joni Mitchell, you get. I mean, they're the logical ones. Blue is the favourite. Court and Spark, and then Hey Gira.
Right.
Bob Dylan, I think, is Highway 61 revisited, then Blonde on Blonde, then Blood on the Tracks.
Blood on the Tracks. It had to be Blood on the Tracks.
Blood on the Tracks is right up there, yeah.
It's funny what this reminds me of, again, go back to when I worked in a record shop. You know, you did get used to kind of synthesizing mass opinion. You know, you worked out, even if you weren't a Supertramp fan or a Genesis fan or whatever, if and it very often was a kind of grandmother or some tourist visiting and say, I've got to take a record back for my nephew, or he likes Genesis or whoever it is, and you would, and they would say, what's the best Pink Floyd album? And you'd have an answer, and it would be perfectly reasonable. Because your answer would be based on what you've learned the majority of people thought was the best Pink Floyd album. You know what I mean? It wasn't a critic's point of view, but it was just based on kind of sufficient interaction with the public, So I suppose, yes, ChatGPT works in the same way. So the best.
Well, I can give you another good example. I asked it what the best British comedy film was. And I thought the answers were really valuable, actually. It said The Full Monty was the best, Monty Python the Holy Grail was the second, Hot Fuzz third, Shaun of the Dead fourth. And I thought that was quite good. Because they're contemporary, aren't they? It's not somebody immediately going. It's like the Citizen Kane argument, isn't it? What's the best film? Citizen Kane. Say hello to people who've probably never seen it. It's actually about stuff that's quite recent. I mean, I can't remember. The Full Monty is pretty good, and it probably is pound for pound funnier than Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
The Word Podcast, prime cuts of popular culture served fresh each week.
So Lisa Marie Presley's memoir has come out. I mean, obviously produced posthumously and finished by her daughter. And I haven't read it, but I've been reading some reviews of it. And it's just the stuff, the information about growing up in Graceland is phenomenal. Like Beverly Hillbillies with drugs and guns. There's indications that there are elderly women there, members of the family, pulling knives on each other.
Oh, yeah, there would be.
It says everybody rides around in golf carts. It's like a full-on demolition derby all day long. And she herself lives like aged whatever, I don't know, 8, 9, whatever, lives like a feral princess, kind of running wild with cousins and starved children and threatening to have people fired if they don't obey her. There's a moment in it when Elvis decides he lets her ride her pony through the house, where it defecates outside her snuff pipe smoking great grandmother's bedroom, and there's sheds full of weapons and fireworks, and says Dad and his friends would take firecrackers and shoot them at each other. And I was just reading that, and I was just reminded of the Moon Unit Zappa book that came out recently, which was lots of really interesting things have been written about. Somebody made the point that it was the emotional incontinence of straight-laced America combined with freewheeling individualism to produce the worst of both worlds. And you just look at it, it's one of those things where when you were younger, you kind of thought these things sounded extraordinary and kind of fascinating. And when you get older and you're a parent or indeed a grandparent, you look at it with absolute fear, don't you think? She talked about, Moon Unit talked about how they had a painting of an orgy in the living room. She said, Dad, for a while, had one of his girlfriends living in the basement. And she says she had to tiptoe around her quiet, please, musical genius at work father. Because, once he was in the studio, he shouldn't be disturbed. And she would come home to find naked hippies making candles in the garden. And there's one really interesting bit where you remember the single Valley Girl.
Yeah.
And basically, she was doing this kind of, valley speak, that kind of whole kind of gnarly kind of lingo that was the thing at the time in Los Angeles. And he decided he was going to make a kind of comedy, a novelty record sung by her and recorded her. And then, of course, it became his biggest hit. It was the biggest hit he ever had. And it wasn't in his name. It was in her name.
Doesn't like that.
So he doesn't like this at all, and he's really aggrieved by the fact that, that all those things he's done himself haven't got anywhere near the amount of attention. And she's really aggrieved because I don't think she gets much money out of it. And then there's the whole legal issue, isn't there, that's developed since with Moon Unit versus her mum, really, and the estate and the will.
Oh, it's incredibly complex. I mean, first of all, on Elvis Presley, I mean, the amazing thing, which I reflect upon regularly when I read about Elvis or think about Elvis, here's a person, normally massive fame and wealth changes people. It didn't with Elvis Presley. Nothing. He was a hillbilly. He was just a hillbilly with an unlimited budget. He was able to do the things that the 12-year-old Elvis would have wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he did them, Whereas you contrast, I do think it's quite interesting. You contrast him with the later generation of superstars, Obviously the Beatles and Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan or whatever. They all kind of developed. They used their enormous wealth and celebrity to develop interests and tastes that were way beyond what they would have developed, how they would have developed if they hadn't been famous and wealthy. Elvis didn't do that at all.
No.
You know what I mean? It was firing guns. It was having my mates around. It was letting my kids
barbecues,
do whatever they wanted to do. And Zappa,
just have a bigger hamburger.
Yeah, so Elvis, hillbilly. Zappa, energetic immigrant. You know what I mean? Come into the new world, Italian family, let's make the best of ourselves. And so what Frank Zappa did was he just worked. That's all he did. He just worked. And nothing was allowed to get in the way of the work, He was, he didn't run a chain of shoe stores and work in those all the time. He ran a musical career, which he worked at all the time. And I've seen Moon Unit being interviewed. She's very good, actually.
She's really good.
She is really good. She seems remarkably unspoiled by the whole experience. At whatever age she is, she must be in her 50s now or something like that, possibly even older. And she says the reason she did Valley Girl was to spend time with her father.
Yeah.
You never got to spend time with your father because he was always in the studio. Or he was always out there, So neither of these cases were kind of were exemplary parent figures at all. And of course, Zappa then massively complicates so when he dies, and he was ill for a long time, so it wasn't a shock, was it? I mean, he had no health insurance. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, she said, I saw a little clip of her being interviewed, and it's really interesting. She said, how are you a genius? Everyone said he was a genius. How are you a genius if you don't have health insurance? And this is a guy who had a terminal illness. I remember we just launched Mojo when he died, and we put him on the fourth cover of Mojo, did this huge piece about him. It was an enormous event, really, really sad. But he'd known for a long time that he was very, very ill, and known that he was terminally ill. And so he left what she was told was no will. Her mother, Gail Zappa, had said there was no will. When her mother died, they discovered that there had been a will.
There had been a will.
And that her mother had changed the will. He had left a will making clear that his 4 children should split the estate or whatever with her. An even split between all of them. But she then changed the will so that it was 30% to Ahmed and Diva and 20% to Moon and Dweezil. And why? What on earth? For what reason?
That is
to say that she's still aggrieved about this is an understatement. And I totally, totally sympathise. I mean, A, you've had this terribly difficult life. B, you'd like to have seen more of your father, with whom you had a very complicated relationship. C, you fell out with him at one point. And D, after all of that, there must be some money somewhere. Why can't you inherit some of it? Not that simple. She also, Dave, another extraordinary detail, gave him her own house that she'd bought to help pay for his medical bills.
God.
So she actually just handed over a house and said, "Well, look, let me put this towards the cost of the hospital." So it's just an extraordinary story.
Well, in the words of Alan Bennett, all families have a secret, and the secret is they're not like other families. So on that note, did you notice that? Are you too late to get your bid in for Billy Joel's $49 million home on Long Island, which he's put on the market? Again, an extraordinary feature in the New York Times.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
This is such a high-end property sale that the hand-picked estate agents who are allowed to bid for it were taken there by speedboat. Don't even go on the same earth as the rest of us.
Yeah,
extraordinary place that he had his eye on when he was a poor kid growing up on Long Island, working on the oyster trade. And I used to look at these houses and think about the enormously wealthy robber barons who lived on these places, all these places built in the 19th century. And he swore that if he was ever successful, he was going to have one. And he duly got this place.
The statistics about it are extraordinary. There's a little interview with him, isn't there, in the piece? And he said, ask him how big it is. I think it's 26 acres. Beach house, guest houses, 18 bedrooms, swimming pool, bowling alley, helipad. And he said I'll give you an idea. He said, at a brisk pace, it takes me 9 minutes and 3 seconds to walk from one side to the other. He said, which is pretty much the amount of time it takes me to walk 7 city blocks in Manhattan. I mean, that is unbelievable. 3
swimming pools, private beach, and the helipad, which you mentioned, is the helipad that became legendary when he started doing, and written about this, when he started doing his summer residency Saturday evening at Madison Square Garden. And so he used to start the evening sitting out on the lawn overlooking Oyster Bay. And you'd hear the distant thock, thock, thock of helicopter arriving, landing on his lawn, picking him up, whisking him to UN Plaza in Manhattan, blacked out people carrier straight into the bowels of Madison Square Garden, up in the lift, pretty much straight onto stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Billy Joel, And then he'd leave 2 hours later, people carrier, helicopter.
20 minutes later, he'd be back in his swimming pool.
Back on his lawn, having a large cigar and a glass of, a large glass of very fine Burgundy, I would think. A few $1 million richer. But he did that because another detail in the piece was that this property is so expensive that even if you bought it, you have to pay $500,000 a year in local taxes just for the pleasure of living in the place that you actually own. And I can't imagine how many servants and staff and gardeners and, you must have people out there to literally brush your private beach every morning. Was it 200 feet of private? No, it's more than 200 feet. Enormous, great
it's more than
private.
But I thought there was something interesting in the psychology of it. That I can understand that if you've made a lot of money, you want to be reminded constantly that you've made a lot of money and you buy the island of Necker or whatever. But in this case, he grew up, as you said, in a suburb called Hicksville, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And looking out at these houses and seeing them and passing them every day. And that every day now he gets up and he looks back to where he was born.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly reminded by, this was, it was a really humble working class life, wasn't it?
It really very hard life.
No television set and they were really up against it, It's a fantastic story.
But now he's selling it now and he's moving to Florida. Well, I think he spends most of his time in Florida because he's got a third family of 7-year-olds or something.
Yeah, he's got a 7 and a 9-year-old, isn't he?
They're in school. How does that work? I do not.
I know.
I do not know. If you got access to the New York Times site, go and have a look at Billy Joel's extraordinary property. It's not often you get to see inside these kind of places. Absolutely.
Get your bid in quick.
Get your bid in. Why were we talking about supergroups?
Supergroups. Well, we were talking about yesterday, weren't we? Because we'd been talking about Tom Petty on the podcast last week.
Oh, right.
And I was thinking whether or not, apart from the Travelling Wilburys and maybe Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and 2 or 3 others, I wondered if there were that many successful supergroups. But then again, I've started to think of a few, Dave.
Cream?
Cream. Well, I never did. Were there? I suppose there were.
Yes, they were. Because
you see, when I was a kid,
when Cream formed, that's why they were called Cream. That was the idea. The top guitarist and the top bass player and the top drummer are forming a group, and they're going to be called The Cream, as they were first of all, and then it was just Cream. So, they were, and I still held that Disraeli Gears is a really good record.
It's a pop record.
Yeah, it's
3-minute songs.
Really good pop record.
ABBA were a supergroup.
Yes. Yeah, the form, they put 2 together, didn't they?
Yeah.
Or something like that. I mean, other interesting examples, Steel Eye Span were a supergroup because it was Tim Hart and Maddie Pryor. Was it Gay and Terry Woods? Were they? And
it was. They
Martin
originated,
Carthy, Ashley Hutchins, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So Ashley Hutchins for Fairport Convention, all these people. Peter, Paul and Mary were formed by Albert Grossman, weren't they? There were 3 successful solo acts, and he wanted 2 blokes and he wanted a glamorous woman because he wanted an act who could play cabaret clubs, They weren't just the folk circuit. And in the world of country, the Highwaymen.
They were. No, they were really successful. Yeah.
Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson and
And I suppose Steam Packet.
Yes. Yeah.
Steam Packet were really, weren't they? I tell you, the other really obvious one I completely forgot about was 10cc. I mean, 10cc were an enormous. Every single one of those guys had a big
they're all done something separately, haven't they?
Humble Pie to some extent.
Yes,
a little bit.
Weather Report. Were Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter, coming in from Miles Davis bands, and pretty much everybody who joined Weather Report, Jaco Pastorius and so forth, they're all people who had some kind of standing on their own. Do you know, can I express a controversial opinion on the subject of supergroups?
Yeah, go on.
I don't like Crosby, Stills and Nash. I've decided I don't like them. I had the same enthusiasm for them as everybody did when they first appeared and so forth. I never listened to them. And the same thing applies to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, really, because I don't think they were ever a group. Whenever I listen to anything by them, I always think this would be better if they were on their own. What if you were going to choose one record to represent Crosby, Stills, and Nash? What would it be?
Deja Vu? Or one track, wooden ships.
One track. Well, if
Wooden ships. I don't know.
Wooden Ships is a David Crosby song. Wasn't it first done by Jefferson Airplane anyway? I think it was. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, that's a Stephen Stills song.
Yeah.
Marrakesh Express is a Graham Nash song. They all sound like they're doing their individual bit with the other ones supplying
it's the other people's harmonies, isn't it?
Yeah. So which is clearly a very attractive thing. But, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, am I bothered? No.
Clearly not.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.